And welcome. It is the final edition of the season, the 7th year of the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230, online at bullfallsradio.com, mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. It is show number 32 of the year, and this year, 32 in a row. That meant I have not taken any vacation time in the last 32 weeks.
That's a big number.
I'm taking 3 days off next week.
well deserved.
But with Jeff Gress, I'm Chad Holmes again. Been a great run since the middle of August, and now the winter high school sports season officially came to an end with the basketball state tournament last week. We're going to talk a bit about that. We're going to talk generally about what we saw in high school basketball, both boys and girls basketball. We're going to be joined by B.J. Brandt, the Wausau West head hockey coach, at 7 o'clock, talk about the hockey season, both in terms of the boys and the girls. And also, coming up at 6:40, we will be talking to Brad Hanson from WAOW. He was one of the play-by-play announcers the last 2 weekends at both the girls basketball state tournament and the boys basketball state tournament. And I would say overall, the last 2 weeks had a lot of thrilling moments. I don't know whether, and I plan on asking Brad, who's been doing this for quite a long time, if this was the most exciting run of 2 weeks of high school basketball state tournament action. But boy, again, we had a number of really exciting games. Maybe not quite as many with the boys as we saw with the girls this year, but still a 4 overtime game to get things going on Friday, but buzzer beater on Thursday that I was standing right on the sidelines getting ready for my broadcast from. And again, generally, your thoughts, especially last weekend on the boys' side, did you like what you saw?
Yeah, the games I was able to watch, or when you went back and even looked at the highlights for the one you were able to sit down and see, it was just, I don't know. You start off with, there's one that goes to 4 overtimes, and you're sitting there and you're like, and I actually, that game got done. And I went and checked a college game, and I came back. I'm like, oh, yeah, there's another game on.
Yeah, 4 overtimes. You got a kid that's all bloodied up, too. Yeah. So, I mean, it was like everything was
people like that
there.
shot. There was some text messages going off on the shot of the tooth getting loose and blood coming out.
I really didn't take close looks at that. I'm not a big fan of that.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there. But I just thought from a perspective of just, being an observer, a fan of the game, enjoying high school basketball, you got mixes of all that you wanted to see. You saw good teams, good coaching, competitive games, last-second shots, interesting matchups, kids step up when they needed to. Some incredible, when we break it down a little bit more, some records being set that I thought were just some outstanding numbers. And just a good weekend of competitive. The which you had a couple games that were lopsided, but that was just based on the matchups or a team didn't shoot well, whatever it may have been. But other than that, I just thought a lot to entertain you, which is what was tough off air when we were talking, that the crowds didn't look as good again. They didn't, and that's disappointing to me as a fan, because there's makings of great storylines and things that these athletes and coaches and programs and teams did so well. Just to be part of that, to get down there to win it, whatever it was, that I think they deserve the recognition from the fan side of having that atmosphere of that roar inside the gym when things are exciting.
A little later in the show, I want to talk about that and talk about maybe ideas in terms of trying to get that juice again. And I think with basketball, especially the boys' side, we used to see, I think, some near sellout crowds, or even sellout crowds, have not seen that. And of course, I think again, the pandemic was a factor, but now we're past that, and ideas maybe on what we can do, and I think it's something we'll talk with B.J. Brandt about as well, because I was actually talking to Coach Brandt that I read an article on the Athletic website a couple of weeks ago about the Minnesota State Hockey Tournament, and they get 20,000 people in multiple rounds. I mean, it's just amazing. And again, Minnesota is the state of hockey. Yeah. But when you look at a lot of the different sports, when you get to the state finals, and I mean, you look at Camp Randall Stadium for football, and football is probably the most popular of the sports, but ultimately, you look at Camp Randall, there's not really a lot of people that come to those games. And now you look at some of the other sports. I think wrestling actually does a great job where they are able to fill up both the Kohl Center and the field house for individual and team activities. But I think a little bit later on, we'll kind of delve into maybe what needs to be done, maybe what areas, what groups need to be a little bit more active in terms of trying to as you say, I think anybody that is around it loves it, and hopefully we can spread that a little bit as we go into the future. Let's talk a bit about last weekend and the state tournament. We'll get more generalized with Brandt Hanson a little bit later on, but thought we would just kind of go over what we saw last weekend, maybe some of the highlights and what in terms of what you saw. The Thursday, we started off with Division III and Division IV semifinals. Division III, the first game of the tournament was a blowout, and it was like the girls' state tournament. The first game was a blowout. Number 1 St. Thomas More beat number 4 Prescott 68-45. Then in game number 2, it was a thriller. I got there. I went down there because we had the marathon game Thursday night, and I got there for the Kiel Lakeside Lutheran game. I got there in the first half. I spent a lot of the second half just standing near the sidelines and basically near to the end where Lakeside Lutheran hit the game-winning shot, just an incredible shot. I mean, it was really great defense. Kiel couldn't have done any better defensively, but Lakeside Lutheran beat Kiel 57-55. And then Thursday night, it was the Division IV semifinals, and number 1 seeded Marathon, a game that we had right here on Bull Falls Radio. A rough night for the Raiders. Never really able to get it going. Fell to number 4 Kenosha St. Joseph Catholic 46-37. And then another thriller in the second game. An incredible comeback. I mean, I haven't seen a comeback like that in a very long time, where Mineral Point's down by 7 points with a minute to go in regulation, and we're able to rally past Aquinas 62-61. So let's talk about those semifinals first. Division III, in the first session of the state tournament, 1 blowout and 1 very exciting finish.
Well, and, just breaking that down, the final score sometimes doesn't reflect, because that Prescott St. Thomas More game, I think it was 46-41 yet with about 8 minutes left. But the end of the score showed that they beat them up. And then, all of a sudden,
I will be honest with you, I was driving at the time. I did not see any of that game.
Yeah, no, and I'm not trying to contradict
No.
I'm just painting the picture that it was tight for a while.
It's good to know.
But then, here's where teams get you. All of a sudden, there's a lapse on one side, and St. Thomas More just kind of goes off on a run. Their transition, but with their speed up the floor, made a big difference in that win over Prescott in those last 8 minutes. Just own the floor, and that led to that blowout. I think it was a 16-0 run right out of that gate, where it was 46-41. So that's a difference maker. You're not going to recover from that. With Lakeside Lutheran, I think you said it. That shot was incredible. The defense was everything you wanted. Kiel has been, I think they were undefeated up until that point, right? They were 28-0. Yep. And so everything's riding on the last play of the game, and the kid finishes, and it lived up to what it should be with the battle of some back and forth and their guards versus their bigs. Each team seemed to have a pretty good solid big guy, pretty solid guard, and Guzman hits that shot, I think, with about 1.5 left, and that's it. You can't recover. Sends them. But for them, give Lakeside Lutheran credit. They replaced. They lost in the state championship, I think, last year also, and they replaced all 4 starters. And to pop back there and have that, make it just as far, I think, with a lot of new players is good. Being a fan of Central Wisconsin, coaching in Marywood, knowing Coach Jacobson as well as we do, I just felt for him, because the outstanding season with winning the Marywood Conference, which is not an easy thing. They were consistent in who they were all year. They never strayed from that. They were balanced. They passed the ball well. They obviously had Warren, the big guy. They had great guard play. Balance between upperclassmen and underclassmen with the experience that they had. And that happens. You can go back and list the games where you just don't shoot the ball that well. They
turned it over a lot, and that was, I thought, it was so unlike them.
Well, you can get, you get spread out. You get a little nervous, or you get anxiety.
One quick point there. When you talk about spread out, I thought what Kenosha St. Joseph Catholic did a lot of that game was they did use the size of the court. Yeah. They really did try to spread out Marathon. We saw their outstanding guard. Boy, he would start off 40, 45 feet from the basket. They would really try to use the court to their advantage, I thought. And as a coach, did you notice that as well?
Yeah, I thought that was one of the big things, was the pace of the game was in St. Joe's favor, and they really spread it. And then, the thing that I thought was impressive, which you got to I don't like saying this because I root for Marathon, you got to tip the hat to St. Joe on the, when the Warren touched the ball, they were all over him. I mean, they came from everywhere. So that was a good defensive game plan on their part. And then the incredible part, they didn't sub until they brought those guys in at the end of the game. I think they played all 5 same guys on that larger court, which you would think naturally you would get winded. You wouldn't have the stamina to do that. So, you got to give them credit. And it was still, it was only 9.
Let me ask you,
tight.
let me ask you something about that game that popped into my mind while I was doing it. And we had moments where there were long possessions. I found myself wanting a shot clock at times. I did. I thought, I think, again, for the most part, and again, you can't, I think, make decisions based on small samples. And I think for the most part, we rarely see where a game really is affected by a lack of a shot clock. But there are moments, and especially when you get to a point of a game where there's 2-3 minutes to go, where then all of a sudden they start taking and that's the most important time of the game. I thought there were moments during this tournament that there were times where I thought, man, a shot clock would be a good thing. Not a 30-second shot clock, but, boy, if you have 45 seconds, that's plenty of time to get a shot off. Yeah. And, again, I know there's a lot of different issues involved in getting it, but I thought at times that in that game it would have been a better game if we had a shot clock.
Yeah, I agree with you. You know what? Some of the complaints that I get, my wife and I talk about this because, obviously you got to listen to your wife on basketball at some point. And one of the things she hates about the game is the fouls at the end. She's like, it just drags the game. Shot clock would eliminate some of that. That would help in that strategy because there's not really another strategy if you're down and you need the ball back and you got to do it fast. You got to go hack somebody and get them to that foul line or get them to turn it over or something where you can get some pressure on it. The shot clock would help that factor of maybe taking away that. But I felt like that too when I've seen some games in the last couple of minutes. Like, man, let's get going. Let's keep the foot on the pedal. And the air comes out of the ball, and it's a fair strategy if you think you can win it that way. And it's nothing wrong with it. But there's moments like that. There's so many other sides to it where the shot clock would be very difficult to implement, I think. But I think it's always up there for discussion. Always a thought that could this make the game better? And if it could, I think it's something that should be looked at. I'll jump to the Mineral Point Aquinas game. Sure. I get excited talking about that moment because in minute 9, whatever it was, Mineral Point came back. I turned to that and I told my son the game's over. This one's done.
Many people, I'm sure, turned it off.
Well, I'm so happy I didn't. I mean, it was fun watching that happen. And if you had heartbreaking for Aquinas, when, for Mineral Point, hitting shots, creating turnovers, getting the ball back, making something happen when you're technically probably counted out at that point. And most teams probably in their heads maybe, but that's the idea down at the state. You got nothing left to go because it is your last time on that court if you don't do what you need to do. So for them, to hit that 3, almost as time's up, I think Aquinas they turned the ball over on one play there at the end, but that 8-0 run in the final 70 seconds of the game or whatever it was made a big difference. And that 1,000, the kid's name is 1,000, I believe, that hit the 3, ended with 27 points and hit that big shot to go ahead and take that 62-61 lead. Good for them because then that momentum gels into the next game.
Well, let's jump to the championship in D4 because it was almost the reverse because we saw Mineral Point come out of nowhere to win that game. They almost let a game that they appeared to have in the bag in the championship round get away as Kenosha St. Joseph Catholic came out of nowhere. They were down. I mean, it was done again, and they actually took the lead, but then Mineral Point on the putback in the final seconds win 65-64. I mean, you talk about just 2 games that thrillers for Mineral Point, both in the semifinals and the finals. They found a way in both of them.
And that's what, teams do. That's where these build a little confidence because they still had enough in the tank to get through that situation. I think it was
well, you could see the wheels coming off though. You could just feel it as St. Joseph Catholic kept on late in the final couple of minutes. All of a sudden, like at first they thought there's no way this is going to happen. Then all of a sudden it just felt like, boy, Mineral Point just darn near fell apart.
Well, in 2 minutes, it was the final 2 minutes of the game. They blew an 11-point lead. Like you said, it was hands down theirs. And St. Joe's isn't going to be any slouch with the guard play that they have. They've got kids that can fill it up, kids that can turn the pressure, and they've been tested in that tough conference. St. Joe's has. They played in a very good basketball conference, and it wasn't any easy games. They're night in and night out, so they know how to face this adversity and come back. And for Mineral Point, there's something to be said. How many times have you heard either a coach or a program kind of listen? You got to have a little luck down there. You got to have a little luck. And they did when they got that final putback with about 1.4 seconds left. And it was a fun bracket to watch. Mineral Point hit, I believe, 24 3-pointers in 2 state games. That's a lot of threes. That's, and then for St. Joe's, no factor in 2 years where they came up in second place, and I think they did it both years as the 4th seed. So you got to give them credit there.
And let's talk about the D3 championship game in this part of the discussion while we may as well go division by division, make it simpler. St. Thomas More, they came in as a significant favorite, I thought, and they showed why. And they were able to. Lakeside Lutheran, actually, I thought this was going to be a blowout, to be honest with you, and they kind of hung around, but in the end, it was just too much St. Thomas More.
Right, and it was kind of like when I was mentioned that Prescott game. Again, it got down to 9. I think Lakeside Lutheran had the lead a little bit, and then bam, an 18-3 run.
Right.
And their speed and their defensive pressure and athleticism just comes out to be too much, and St. Thomas More kicks it into gear for, I think that was their first state title since the WISA days. If I'm not mistaken.
I think you're right, too.
And, they just phenomenal game. They were one of the more athletic teams, I thought, in the whole thing from 1 through 5. They just got up and down the floor well. They pressured well. And, to their credit, came out and handled a good Lakeside Lutheran team that has a lot of promise coming back for next year with some of the players they had at the junior level.
D5, what a shooting exhibition that we saw from Columbus Catholic, both in their semifinal, a 78-65 win over Salon Springs. That was my upset pick, and for a while there, it
looked like you had it.
I know, and then Columbus just kept hitting 3 after 3 after 3. The other semifinal was much different. It was much more of a low-scoring affair, but Abundant Life Christian knocked off Alman Bancroft 42-37. And then another, just an offensive game where the shots were dropping. Every time, again, Columbus Catholic, they just kept making shots. For 2 straight days, and they won 81-75 in the championship round. And I guess the thing that jumped out is a D5 team is so used to playing in these small gyms, and the way they adjust to be able to get into the Kohl Center, the sight lines are so different. I was so impressed with the way that they were able to shoot the basketball.
Yeah, you just don't think you can shoot that high when you're used to the backdrop where there's a stage right up on one of the hoops underneath, and there's a wall probably on the other one, and it's tight. And it, teams though, to their credit, they go out before they go down to the state games and they find a bigger court, but I don't always think they get that big backdrop that they can't. Those gyms aren't going to be that big that they're going to go play, and they're just trying to get the size of the court down. So for Columbus Catholic, when things start to sell, they're good ball handlers. They pass the ball well, and the old adage goes that shooters shoot, and they definitely did that. They were. In the semifinal, I think they were 17 of 19 from the free throw line. This is just the free throw line.
Right.
And then in the championship, they were 21 of 22, and I think they set a record. That's a high, or that's low 90, 93, 92% somewhere in there. So they shot phenomenal. Plus the amount of threes they hit. They hit, I think, 13 in the semis and 14 in the championship. How you when you're trading 2s for 3s, it's just mathematically not going to work out. But Columbus did what they did, which they've beaten you on to Coach Konitsky and his teams. They handle the ball well. They pass the ball well. They get up and down the floor. And they're never out of anything because they shoot with this confidence that the next one's always going in, and you could see it. And when they have multiple kids that can do that, that's a dangerous team. One of the articles I read on the write-ups afterwards talked about how they have these used shoot-around machines, and they're just beat up, and they're constantly going off. Well, it shows, and that shows how well they were able to play down there. And congratulations for them. And I always forget because they're such a good team around here, and they win that conference, that's their first state title for the WIA part of it since they moved into that the public sector there. So credit to them and some phenomenal play and to that group of seniors and especially, again, like we talked about last week with what Coach Konitsky and his son, the challenges that they faced with family stuff throughout the season. It's just, kind of a nice moment to share and finish it all off when you go through some tough times.
Division II ended up with a undefeated state champion. You got Wisconsin Lutheran, who just barely got past number 4 seeded Nicolay, 56-54 in the semifinals on Friday. Pewaukee beat West Salem 89-69, and then Wisconsin Lutheran made sure it was not as tight in the championship round, 83-62. 30 wins and 0 losses. That's not easy to do. That's just an incredible season.
Well, and with Wisconsin Valley Lutheran.
No, Wisconsin Lutheran.
Or sorry, Wisconsin. Yeah, I always say sorry. You know where I live. So Wisconsin Lutheran. The thing that impressed me the most is in the semi. Did you see the end of that?
Yes, I did.
It looked like they were done when he tripped and fell on that sideline. I don't know. I think he was going to take it to the basket, and that was kind of the idea: get to the basket, get a foul, or he's such a good passer, dish it off. And Knipple slips and falls, and in midstream picks it up and hits the kid that flash to the basket, which again shows young players that hopefully are watching that the play's never done. Don't take time off. Don't stand straight up. Don't miss that final moment, because that's what happened for the defense for Nicolay. So they could have very well not been in that championship. And then Pewaukee, I thought the way they handled West Salem, I thought they were going for the four-peat. I mean, they played really well in that semi. There was not a lot of mistakes. Yeah. They came out and owned it, jumped the score at 15-4, and then they were up at half again by plenty. And to Wisconsin Lutheran's credit, just came out and finished off that season. They shot, which I thought was impressive, the way they care for the ball on their shot process. I think it was 68% in the first half, 81% in the second half. I mean, that's phenomenal shooting, and it also means your judgment on your shots is pretty good, and the consistency, and then what I love about it, and what I think is a deciding factor, is how players pick other players up. Their best player, Knipple, that's going to Duke, only had 11 points. But at the end of the day, it shows what it's about. Who cares? Team won. We're 30-0, and we got a state title, and did it against a very good team. So, congratulations to them. It was well fought.
And then finally, Division I, 4 overtimes in the first semifinal. Arrowhead, number 1 seed, survived number 4 Neenah, 99-95 in those 4 OTs. Kettle Moraine lost to Marquette, 67-60. And then maybe, I don't know, was Arrowhead fatigued after Friday night? You don't know, as Marquette able to pull away 84-62 to win the championship. But I tell you, that first semifinal Friday night, amazing. I mean, an amazing game, amazing effort on both sides, go 4 overtimes, and really one of the things that it was so much fun to watch, to see who is ultimately going to be able to survive it, because Neenah just would not go away.
Yeah, I thought
they came out so very well in that game.
What do you think? You watched enough games. You think one of the better ones you've seen over the one of the best ones?
Well, you talk about drama.
Yeah.
I mean, you just talk about drama,
excitement.
Yes, the drama and teams needing to make shots, and they made. I mean, it wasn't a case where they would milk it down to a final shot. There were shots that were made to force extra time. It was there were shots that were made. It wasn't always about missing a shot. There goes the buzzer. We're going to go to the next level. No, it was incredible.
And I like the way that those players stepped up, because every time it looked like a team got like they solidified it just enough. They'd have one stop or couldn't do one or one bucket here. The other team always responded and kept it tight. You just kept wanting it to not end and neither team to lose. I mean, they were shooting around to the camera guys at that point, and those guys are holding up 4s, and it was pretty cool to see, especially for Arrowhead. Neenah was up 12 and a half and looked like they were rolling and playing really well, and the Corso kid had another 30 points, and then it just went back and forth, and unfortunately somebody's got to win that, and Arrowhead pulled it out, and I think there was a fatigue factor. That's a lot of extra basketball. I mean, 4 overtimes, we're talking close to 40. That was another 45 minutes minimum, just estimating the time in my head right now. It could have been longer.
Mm-hmm.
So they played Arrowhead. For them to pull it out was great, but Marquette stopped Kettle Moraine on a run. They looked like they had that one early, and Kettle Moraine, to their credit, came and fought back a little bit, but because it was 37-24 at half. So Marquette pulled that one out, and then I think just the command that they had in that state championship game. I mean, they had, I think their assist to turnover ratio was 23-6. That's great. I mean, when you could go to the state title on a new court, bigger floor, more room for error, shots being differentiated a little bit by the size of the background and everything. If you can only commit 6 turnovers in a basketball game, that's outstanding. And for Marquette, you gotta love being at that school. They football and basketball.
Mm-hmm.
State title, and you see that out of these players, because a couple of those guys, one of those guys that started was the starting quarterback too. So you see that out of these schools, which is cool to see those classes come through and own that, and a lot of excitement for them at the D1 level.
Well, I'm going to bring it up.
Go for it.
4 out of 5 are private schools, and it took basically a miracle for the 5th to win it, because if Mineral Point doesn't come from behind against Aquinas, then it would have been 5 out of 5, because it would have been an all private school. And I'm sure you've heard it, and I've seen it on social
I got
media.
text messages this
Of course.
weekend.
And again, these people have no idea. A lot of them don't have any idea about any of these schools. They have no idea. There's a sense that they're paying to play, and it's just a lot of garbage out there. But it's still out there, and when we talk about, again, the interest involved in it, and when you hear negativity, that doesn't do any good.
No.
But in terms of the interest, but I guess, what are your thoughts when you hear the comments? Again, they could be uneducated or educated, one way or the other. 4 out of 5 private schools championships.
Yeah, I mean, to hear it's difficult for me because where I work, I work at Newman,
Right.
and I know that,
I haven't seen all these $1 million gyms and practice fields over at Newman.
that's what I'm saying. Like for people that think there's the recruitment there, we have students and families coming in on scheduled tours because they're interested in the school.
Mm-hmm.
But I think when people use that term recruitment, they think like as coaches, we're leaving the Catholic school and we're walking out and seeing high school kids that are playing on a playground and doing, oh yeah, we're at school. You go, you go over to this school, we'll come over here. That's not happening. I mean, a kid walks in your building for a tour, wants to be part of it. You're going to try to sell them on your building, but it's not like our building is overpopulated. The classrooms are blowing open because there's not enough room.
Right.
I mean, and I'm not that's biased because they're not in like inner city, Milwaukee school or inner city Madison or at these big areas where people are worried about that. I don't know. I mean, I'd be curious to think what the cause is that people are making that argument with the recruitment. I mean, there is school choice out there where people get to pick where they want to go. There's voucher programs that sometimes can give a kid an opportunity that they weren't able to get. So I think there's a lot of positives to be had by people getting to decide on schools. I think the transfer rules have done a good job of keeping kids in check where you just can't leave a bad situation if you don't get the minutes or if things don't work out the way you want. You just jump ship. Like when I played, you could go from one school to another and back, and there's no penalty. Other than your friends probably not liking you very much.
Right.
But I do think it's important with that multiplier, or not the multiplier, the rule they're going to put into effect.
The success ratio.
Yeah, I think that's going to be interesting, and I think that's fair to jump them up, jump teams up, especially at state. There are teams we see. I don't think teams can go from they can't go from 5 to Division I. We all know that's not possible. But in the state game, you could jump a division. There's teams we think that can compete from one division to the next, and I think if you have a term of success, you should be up for that challenge. So to the argument that's tossed out there half the time, I don't take it seriously. I think it's I think it's loosely based on people thinking jealousy. I mean, your point I don't know how to defend though. You telling me that there's more Catholic schools winning than there were public. I mean,
and it happened to be that way this year.
Yeah,
and it's not always that way.
No.
I've seen stats where in the 2 decades since the private schools joined the WIAA, that the percentage of state championships is actually lower than the number of private schools involved. I mean, so again, but this year it certainly was a lot of Catholic schools bringing the hardware home.
Right, and I don't know. I like.
And again, this will be the first real test of this success ratio as well. Yeah. It's going to be very interesting. Maybe this is something that will take away some of the dynasties. I think that's what they're trying to avoid, is having the same school have dynasties in one of the lower to middle divisions.
And if somebody wants to, place that argument, then they're going to bump up if they win too many, basically. Mm-hmm. So it would be fair in the sense that, yeah, they had their moment. I mean, I hate to take away anything. I don't care public, private.
Exactly.
I like to see good kids, good players, good coaches, good programs get down there. Well, they're down there because they're that.
Right.
I mean, that's a fact. If you're not that, you're not making it down there. So those teams are down there and find that success rate, and to have to paint the label on it really takes, because they're all working so hard.
Exactly.
From the coaches to the players to the families involved to the program. Everybody is working hard and having that dream, and they deserve it.
And I may be a little off here, but so many of the complaints are from people that have programs that don't work hard enough, who don't coach well enough. I mean, again, it's a real easy excuse to say, well, we would have won except for this. Well, I seriously doubt that, because most of the winners were not making excuses while they were working to get there.
Right. Well,
Again,
yeah, it's not fair to take away the hard work that all the put in. I mean, that's why the state championship is such a dream for all the players that take that seriously. Why it's such a big deal. And probably why we still have some of those jealousies and words of argumentation come between the public-private sector is because everybody wants to make it down there.
Right.
But at the same time, I think with all the hard work and all these things teams put in, whatever it becomes, it becomes. I'm looking for good basketball games of good teams of what they accomplished, and I think I'm appreciative that. And I'm just from a fan base. I'm appreciative that they got down there, that they can showcase the skill set we see and watch them war with each other. I'm not sitting there thinking until somebody texts me, which happened, let the public-private battle begin because some of the teams were knocking each other off. But
thanks for opening up the door, buddy.
But I don't think of it that way.
No,
and I'm at a Catholic school where I could favor one side or the other, and I don't want to.
And it is a shame because I saw postings on social media during the weekend. Well, I'm going to root for them because they're a public school. I mean, let me explain something to folks. If that's the only reason you're rooting for somebody, then you got a problem.
Yeah.
Because you don't know anything about who the good guys are, who the bad guys are, who's working hard, who's not working hard. Again, if you're going to be that simplistic about it, well, good for you. I mean, honestly, good for you. But that's not the way to do it. And obviously, I know you've seen a lot, behind the walls where you work and the teams that you played over the years as well. And I've seen the same thing where, I mean, again, I don't know. I frankly don't know, say your school, going to bring them in and say, okay, this is what, you don't have all this.
We just have the 6'8" kid from the city.
But you don't have, it's like you bring them into that gym and say, well, okay, come on here.
Yeah.
I mean, compared to the facilities, again, you have other things to sell, but the idea of strictly athletics, I don't see it.
Yeah. If you wanted to bear down on weight room size and newer equipment and number of baskets in a gym,
there's certainly some public schools that are putting a lot of money into those kind of facilities.
Yeah, you don't have that. And I've tried to think of the teams I've coached over the years. Almost, you have a kid walk in the building every now and then that comes from a different situation that wants you out or in for some reason. But other than that, the kids I've had in there have been started from the lower grade levels all the way through, or they moved in and that was the school they picked. It's not like they were jumping ship from another school, for lack of a better thing that they wanted. So I just find it hard to believe that this recruitment is this heavy and people think you're walking out into other schools and telling them to come play for you.
What was the most impressive performance at the state tournament? I guess
individually or team?
Start with team.
Third team.
Yeah, what team said, man, you were just that and again, it doesn't have to be who is the best team, but what performance, what team maybe played up to the highest level that they possibly could have? I mean, I think, Columbus could be argued that way because, again, you just don't see it that often where you see, especially at the lower level, that kind of shooting. Again, I mean, it was just in pressure because, as I said, in that Salon Springs game, Salon Springs had a 4-point lead. It was about, I think, 6-7 minutes to go in the second half. And then all of a sudden, bang, bang, bang. All of a sudden, they couldn't miss from beyond the arc. I mean, it was pressure situations, and they stood up. And you can say the same thing about the championship game as well. So I guess I would say Columbus Catholic. What about you?
Well, my first one would be Columbus Catholic. I thought that just, they had, it showed. They had good senior leaders out of that group. Those were their key cogs in there. Those kids were all the three top seniors out of their three scorers were all player of the years in that conference. And I just thought that they were resilient. They looked a little shaky right away to start the Solon Springs, but that could be written off to getting your feet wet, getting a feel for the play. And then it was nonstop. They just kept that motor going. The pace, the transition, the finishes, the answering every time a team came at them. It was consistent. It was fun to watch. The other team, I thought that, if you want to say owned it, kind of went right through. It was Marquette. I mean, they held Kettle. Kettle Moraine made a nice. They got back something, but it was Marquette's game in the semi, and then over Arrowhead, who who played well against Nina to fight in that game. They just commanded that one, and I thought, not knowing a lot about Marquette, they just it was consistent. It was a good job of taking care of the basketball, polished in what they accomplished. So I thought, those were two of the teams. If you want to go with excitement, you can't go wrong with Mineral Point.
I was going to say honorable mention because to win 2 1-point games at the state tournament,
it's usually unheard of.
It does not happen. I mean, and to do it in 2 different ways. The first way, and both those games were over in different ways. The first game was over. They were done because they're down by 7 points with about a minute to go. And then the championship game, it felt like it was over because they were double-digit lead late in the second half, and they saw it just slip away, and yet they were able to pull off the W in the end. I mean, you just talk about taking years off the lives of the people that support them. I don't know if you can top that.
Well, what I like is one of the interviews I read out of, it might have been that 1,000 kid that hit the 3 in the semifinal over Aquinas. He, I love it when coaches go to the timeout and he's like, yeah, we don't run that play that often, or we've never run it. Coach just drew it up and he slipped the screen and hit the open shot. That stuff's great when it's the street basketball you're getting out of. I mean, I know everybody's got all their systems of go-to, but sometimes you just got to throw something there and trust the intelligence of your players and say, we're rolling on this. We win this, it's going to feel great. We miss it, at least we did everything. We got a nice open look, and that kid buried the shot. So I just think if you're asking for a special season to remember, even though the blood pressure gets driven through the roof, you can't ask for anything better than say we pulled out 2 1-point games, one that we were supposed to lose, and like you said, the other one that we could have played bad enough in those last couple minutes to lose, and we finished it off. So I love that that resiliency to fight all the way down to the wire, and I think that brings up a point, again, trying to get people to get excited about things. The learning lesson involved in the semi, you just never give up. You never stop playing. If at a minute 9 down by 8, it could be in the bag. You could be done. And those kids,
it would have been done if they would have gave up.
Yeah, and those kids didn't. And I just think those are the things that there's a life lesson that is going to carry forth for these guys for the rest of their lives. That just because of the moment down there. And that's what, sports in general should teach everybody if they participate in it.
Coming up at about 7 o'clock, we'll be talking to B.J. Brandt, the Wausau West hockey coach. We're going to recap what happened this season in high school hockey, both on the boys and the girls side. And coming up next, we're going to talk to a guy that had one of the best seats in the house the last 2 weekends. Very exciting girls state basketball tournament, very exciting boys state basketball tournament, and did play-by-play and did some hosting duties for the statewide network. Brad Hanson from WAOW-TV 9. We'll talk to Brad coming up next about his experiences in Green Bay and in Madison. It is our final edition of the season of the Big High School Sports Show. Back in a few moments here on Bull Falls Radio 98.9 and 1230.
What's your idea of winter fun? If it's hitting the trails after a fresh snowfall and you're thinking new snowmobile, it's time to call CCU. That's Clover Belt Credit Union, the leader in financing fun. If you're thinking new four-wheel drive vehicle to get you to the downhill slopes or the cross-country trails, it's time to call CCU. That's Clover Belt Credit Union, the leader in financing fun. Quick, easy loan applications, friendly lenders, and great rates make CCU the lending leader in financing fun. If your idea of winter fun isn't in the snow, maybe hitting the highway in a new motorhome is the way to go. Just give CCU a call. Financing for motorhomes and winter getaways. When you think fun, think Clover Belt Credit Union. What are you waiting for? Life's too short and winter's too long. Call CCU for your great rate financing. Dial 715-842-5693 or apply online or from your smartphone. That's Clover Belt Credit Union. Local lenders lending local money, keeping our community strong.
If you're looking for your next ride, check out Mankey GMC in Schofield. Formerly Fred Miller Automotive, Mankey GMC serves Schofield, Wausau, Marshfield, and Stevens Point with a huge selection of new and pre-owned vehicles. Explore a range of top-notch SUVs like Acadia, Terrain, and Yukon, or choose from the rugged Sierra truck lineup, or even a certified pre-owned vehicle. No matter your dream vehicle awaits at Mankey GMC, 448 Grand Avenue in Schofield, and online at MankeyAuto.com. Mankey GMC in Schofield, where your journey begins. begins.
Hungry for flavor-packed fun?
Dive into Red Robin's sizzling burgers, mouth-watering fries, and endless options.
Or maybe you're craving the perfect slice.
Then it's Donato's Pizza, your passport to pizza perfection.
Order now and treat yourself to an unforgettable taste experience.
Red Robin and Donato's Pizza, 225548 Rib Mountain Drive in Wausau.
Call 715-301-0019 or log on redrobin.com.
Red Robin and Donato's Pizza.
We are the NFHS. That stands for the National Federation of State High School Associations. But really, what we stand for, together with the WIAA, are the 178,000 high school sports students in Wisconsin. And so we stand. We stand for the runners, soccer and basketball players. We stand for their coaches, administrators, and officials. We stand for the swimmers, football players, and wrestlers. We stand for the golfers, softball, and volleyball players. We stand as the national leader and advocate for high school athletics and all who participate in them and make them possible. Because it is our purpose to ensure that high school students get to play, perform, and compete together. To learn more about who we are and what we stand for, visit nfhs.org.
And welcome back. Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Online at bullfallsradio.com. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO and on the Civic Media app. Along with Jeff Gress, I'm Chad Holmes. Last show of the season. We're basically doing a recap of a lot of what we've seen in terms of high school basketball and hockey. We'll be joined by Wausau West hockey coach BJ Brandt to talk about what happened on the ice for both the boys and the girls coming up in a little bit. But right now, we're very happy to welcome back to the program from WAOW and the WIAA statewide television network, a guy that's been very, very busy the last couple of weeks, Brad Hanson. And Brad, first of all, thank you for spending a few minutes with us. I thought you'd be sleeping all week long.
Hey, I've been fighting off a lot of naps during the day, that's for sure. But happy to be with you guys.
Hey, I guess to start things off, again, the last 2 weeks, you were at the state girls tournament over at the Resch Center in Green Bay a couple of weeks back. Last week spent the week in Madison at the boys tournament. I thought especially the girls, and we had some great moments on the boys' side as well, but very competitive this year. And you've been doing this for quite a while. How would you rate this year in terms of the excitement, of the level of competitiveness, the energy around these tournaments? What was your takeaway the last couple of weeks?
I was super impressed, particularly with the girls' tournament. And what's funny is that it was the D5 session Friday morning that seemed to really set the tone. Like we had some good games on Thursday afternoon for sure. But there was something about having two co-op teams in D5. So that's 4 towns. And then Clear Lake and Lena, which basically cleared out their entire towns as well. They set an attendance record, nearly 5,000 people there Friday morning for that session, and it was nuts. I mean, I'm usually very involved with the Friday morning sessions because we'll have Newman there, we'll have Assumption there, and I don't ever remember a morning session being that exciting, and 2 good games as well. And then Championship Saturday for the girls tournament, top to bottom, I think the biggest margin of victory was like 10 points. And that game was close until late-ish and then free throws, and I kind of got away from them. But, that was such a fun tournament. And then the boys tournament, started, for me, I thought started a little bit sleepy, but again, got a lot better as Thursday went on. And then Friday was great. And then I, of course, had the pleasure of being on the call for the longest game in state boys history with 4 overtimes between Neenah and Arrowhead. So, this year I think stuck out to me as probably one of the most exciting and competitive years that I've seen since I've been doing it.
So with that being said, Chad and I go back and forth, and today's gonna be, we've been debating stuff and going back through, and we want to see, because obviously all three of us here in conversation, we know the value of high school sports. We know what's special about those times, and what culminates into these state championships for these teams and these towns and these players and these coaches. Is there a factor you think that is one of the biggest factors to drive the interest level? Because you've had a good girls tournament this year and a good boys tournament. You've had competitive games. You've had star performances. You've had teams comebacks, last shots. Teams do something they're not supposed to. I just think there's a lot to be said that if you watch this year, you're going to be a fan for the next year if it's your first time seeing it. Is there something that you think can drive attendance more than just the interest level peaked by what we saw this year?
It's a great question, and I really think it's hard to say because it so is school dependent. And I don't ever like to pick on anybody or any type of school, but I think about like Notre Dame, who was going for their 4th straight girls title. In their, I believe it was Thursday game or Friday game, whenever they played their semifinal game. It was Friday afternoon because it's Division II.
Mm-hmm.
It just felt empty in there. For them and their fan base, it was a foregone conclusion they were going to play Pewaukee in the championship. We all knew that. They all knew that. And their fans didn't show up. Like, nobody was there. They had a huge crowd there on Saturday for the championship game. But when you look at teams like Clear Lake and Lena, I keep going back to Division 5, and these teams that just are so appreciative to be there. It's such an experience, it's not an every year given kind of situation for them. And so when we get more of those teams who maybe weren't supposed to be there or maybe are supposed to be there but haven't been there before, that does such a big thing for those communities, because now you're talking about the young girls and the young men in those communities. Now they have a class of idols to look up to, right? These are their role models that they talk about. I mean, I don't know how many teams I talked to that said, oh yeah, we were in 4th grade when our team went to state, and we've looked up to them and idolized them and couldn't wait to come back and, give them, give our school and our community a chance to cheer for that. So there's, I think, a little bit of that, but what I think also drives it is we're seeing more and more stars. In the girls tournament, it's the Tyrion twins from Pewaukee, Allie Zabel from Neenah. In the boys tournament, Con Knippel from Wisconsin Lutheran playing his butt off, Mr. Basketball. Now we're starting to see, and I think this is kind of the rise of AAU and all these kids playing basketball year-round all throughout their lives, that we're starting to see some real star power at these tournaments. And there are people coming to see, I would bet there were a good chunk of people that came Friday night and Saturday night of the girls tournament just to see Allie Zabel play. And she was fantastic. So, yeah, I think it's probably a combo of those two things.
And also, I think that we're going to start a bit of a new era with this success factor formula going into effect, where you're not going to see maybe as many dynasties, because if you have so much success, you'll be popped up a division, and that could be a positive, couldn't it?
Yeah, it sure could be. I mean, there's pros and cons to that, right? Like, it's been really fun to watch Notre Dame and Pewaukee duke it out in Division II. I wouldn't be surprised to see both of them move up to D1. And are they as successful? It's hard to tell how they would match up to some of those D1 schools, but it certainly is going to make things a little bit different. And I think it'll probably keep the tournament a little bit fresher in that, even if we do see a Pewaukee make it back next year, they're going to be in D1 and maybe even more in the spotlight. Maybe that's even better for them. Those Tyrion girls can play, and their Janowski girl can play too. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of effect that has as we get down the road with it.
Again, we're talking to Brad Hanson from WAOW-TV 9, who was on the call, was a play-by-play announcer, a host, part of the girls basketball and boys basketball state tournaments the last 2 weeks. Another question real quickly before I get back to Jeff. You talked about star power, and I think we've seen that with Caitlin Clark at the college level, where it's just revolutionized the game, and her and others as well on the girls women's basketball side in college. And we see it, I think, the same way when there's a superstar, whether it's boys or men's basketball. And I think over the last number of years, decades, in fact, there has been this idea of, when they've added divisions, of just getting more teams and from certain sizes or opportunities in that way. When I agree with you that whatever changes are made in the near future has to be about getting the best players there. I think sometimes in the sense of trying to get everybody involved, you lose a little bit of that superstar aspect. And it was not for a nice run by Allie Zabel and Nina in the sectionals this year, where they were actually the lower seed in the sectionals. She could have gone her entire high school career without getting to state. I do think that maybe there's going to be a little bit of a pendulum swing in terms of when you're thinking about any changes to these tournaments. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I totally would. And I mean, you're so right too about the Caitlin Clark effect. And I'm excited to see, especially on the girls' side, the boys' side has always been what it has been. We've always had from, I guess my generation is the Michael Jordan. The guys that are playing now, I guess, would be more LeBron James, Steph Curry. But they've always had those kind of superstars to look up to.
I'm so old, by the way. Mine's Dr. J. So
well, there you go. But for these kids now, especially the girls, maybe they've looked up to Sue Bird or Diana Taurasi, but there's never been anybody like Caitlin Clark. And to see how she is going to change the game for these coming generations, it'll be fun to see, with all the changes that we're going to see, how that will affect the game moving forward. And we might start seeing some logo threes, at the state tournament, but we also might be seeing more of those Allie Zabels and some of these players who really, they have that idol to look up to. They have something to work for, and then they have a reason to put a team on their back and try to carry them in the same way that Caitlin Clark carried the Hawkeyes to the Final Four last year, where the team really outside of her didn't have any they shouldn't have been there for sure.
And jumping into the girls tournament one more time, how was there an individual performance or a team performance that, whether you were on the call of the game or you got to watch it, or obviously were there as part of it, that really stood out to you, that like, hey, this was something special I got to watch, or something I guess that impressed you either team wise or individual wise over that weekend?
Yeah, there were a couple. I was on the call of the Notre Dame game Friday afternoon, and that was, like I had said earlier, that was kind of a foregone conclusion, right? They were going to win. But to see just how much of a well-oiled machine they were, and I watched Gracie Gresh, who's a Wisconsin commit, and she is so impressive with the way that she can pass the ball. I couldn't believe what I was watching. And overall, between the two tournaments, I was really, really impressed with the way a lot of the teams shared the ball and some of the passing that we saw from some of the players. Nick Janowski from Pewaukee stands out to me. But, the one game I think we were all really looking forward to as basketball fans in the girls tournament especially was that matchup between Pewaukee and Notre Dame. And I was the sideline reporter, so I got to watch that from courtside and underneath the hoop. And that was those are two teams who wanted nothing more to leave with the gold ball. And it was just fun because they both competed their hearts out, played their tails off. And, that was a game that'll certainly stick with me.
got to ask you about the experience of doing that 4 overtime game. And as anybody who does games, you just love that experience where you just feel it. You feel the pressure. Even though you're not on the court, you still feel it. You feel that emotion. What was that like? Because it had to have been a completely unique experience to what it's been a terrific career for yourself so far in news and sports, but that had to have been something that was just an amazing experience.
Man, it ranks up there for sure. You know, when we were in lacrosse a couple years ago, I called Lord's Academy, and I don't remember who they beat, but they had a kid who had just come back from an ACL injury, took a pass from the leading scorer and laid it in at the buzzer to win a state championship. And I thought, man, nothing's ever going to top that. And then Justin Jansen hits a 3 at the buzzer after, Brady Corso was out of bounds, stepped back inbounds to tip the pass to Justin and hit the 3 to tie it up and send us into OT. And then it was so tense, 4 minutes. And even normally, I think Nina in 2 of the overtime periods dribbled out with a minute left and tried to get the last shot, which is normally about as boring as it can get. But when you're in that moment and with all that was on the line, even watching them bounce it around for a minute was super exciting. The other thing is we didn't take a commercial break after the end of regulation. So by the time we finally ended the game and tossed it to a commercial, I was able to take a deep breath for the first time, grab a drink of water, and just go, oh my gosh, what did we just watch? That was incredible. So, that's an experience I don't think I'll ever forget.
And I give you credit because I was telling Chad, I was watching the game with my son, and he got done, and I'm like, it was like I felt like that was it. The night was over because I went and checked an NBA and college game, and then I turned back. Oh, there's another game on because it was so late in the night of how long that game lasted. But one for the record books and the memories. I want to hit on Mineral Point with you. The last time you get to, when a team gets to go to state and say the run they made in that last minute 9 or whatever it was to get the win by 1, and then they fall apart a little bit against St. Joe's in the championship and still pull another one out, in the last seconds of that game. Just incredible. I mean, it never happens that way, that it can be so tight and down to those last plays of the games, and you do it twice in a row and you call yourself a state championship. Usually one way or the other, you're winning one to get in the semis, or you're losing and going home because you're on the opposite end of it. But I thought for them it was pretty impressive on how they were able to finish those 2 out.
Man, how many times as a sports fan do you watch your team in that exact situation and you're hoping for exactly what you saw there and you never get it? And yet somehow Mineral Point found a way to do it twice. It was unbelievable, and the atmosphere was absolutely insane for both of those. And I think there was such a mix of awe and shock and wonder and also what the heck just happened kind of a feeling. I mean, you want to talk about winning a gold ball the hard way. They sure found a way, but they got it done.
And I thought equally impressive, obviously being biased in Central Wisconsin, in my coaching career, I've lost enough games to Columbus to give you scouting reports on some of the stuff that Coach Joe does. But again, for the way the impressiveness on how they shot the ball and took care of it in the passing, and just keep shooting it. The next one's going in, and the free throw percentage they had, as well as the amount of the 27 threes they made over those 2 games. I just thought, Chad brought up this point, coming from the small gyms that they're used to playing in, and then, you go practice a little bit before you go down to state on a bigger floor, but it's still not that size of arena with the openness. For them to shoot the ball that phenomenally, it just kicked in, and obviously a well-deserved first state championship for the Columbus Catholic boys basketball program.
Yeah, almost unbelievable. And we talked about it a bunch of the broadcasts Jerry and I did Friday morning when we had their game, that normally when teams come, they struggle. The teams that live and die by the 3, we usually see them die by the 3 at the state tournament because the backdrop is different. What we don't talk about as much, but there's those 2 lines down. And so a lot of these kids are throwing up 3s that are well behind the college line because all they see is a white line, right? And they step behind it. And yeah, they just kept hitting timely three after timely three, and for Emmett to come up the way he did in the championship game, especially with his story and the season that he had and the injuries he had to overcome, so super special to see them lift the gold ball, and finally we got a champion and after a girls tournament where we had no Central Wisconsin teams, it was great to see some success in the boys tournament for sure.
And I guess finally, I assume you did the marathon game Thursday night?
I sure did, yeah.
Yeah, because I was there as well, so I didn't have the opportunity to listen to you and your broadcast. It's obviously tough because you want to see the teams that you watch throughout the course of the season show what we've seen all year long. And unfortunately for Marathon, it was not that case on Thursday night. And we were talking as well, me and Jeff earlier, and I had mentioned to Jeff that in watching the game, I was impressed with how Kenosha St. Joe's was able to use the larger court. They really spread it out. They really started their offense a long way from the basket. They, I thought, used the court in a very effective way. Did you see that as well?
Oh, big time. And it helps when you got a kid who dropped 51 at the state tournament a year before. And he's a threat to score from anywhere on the floor. What I also was really impressed with from Kenosha St. Joe's was the way that they defended inside, particularly. The Garantula, as I was told he's called sometimes, they just couldn't get him the ball in a good spot ever. I think he got positioned 2 or 3 times, and those 2 or 3 times he scored. But, otherwise they had him bodied up front, back, and they threw a lot of passes in there that they shouldn't have been throwing in there. And it just seemed like they couldn't find the adjustment to get him going. And, any game you score 10 points in the first half, you're going to have a hard time winning that, even if you hold the other team to 19 points. But I know when they scored the first bucket of the game, I called it like we had just gotten a game winner. It was very exciting.
I was wondering if they were going to score ever as well. I mean, it's like, right. I think it was more than 6 minutes and it was still 0-0. I think we had a couple of timeouts. It was still 0-0. It was like one of the oddest starts that I can remember in quite a long time. And I imagine it was the same for you.
Yeah. I think you're right. 6.5 minutes almost exactly before we got our first points. And even then the buckets were slow to come. It's not like it opened the floodgates or anything. So,
right.
Yeah, those games are tough because you're trying to find enough to talk about, and there was a lot of slow moving offensive possessions and misses, and so you're going, all right, what do I have supplemental here? What stories can I add in that are going to make the broadcast still entertaining? Because at this point we're trying to overcome a snoozer of a game on the court.
Brad Hanson. Jeff has one more question.
Sorry, one more thing. First off, appreciate the calls and the time down there on these weekends to showcase high school sports. What again, like I said, the three of us talking right now in this conversation know what's so special about the moment. So just that illumination of how special high school sports is. But in your opinion, your opinion, those 2 weekends you spend down there, what makes it so great? That hopefully somebody listening right now can be like, yeah, I want to check it out. I want to be a fan of that. That makes the culmination of these weekends such a special time for all the efforts of those programs and what it takes to get down there.
Yeah, this is something that when I came to Wausau in 2018, I was the sports director. Now I'm the news director, so I'm no longer on air. I'm in charge of 30 some people in our newsroom and making sure our day-to-day operations are great. But as I've continued to move around our operation, I continue to ask to keep this and keep these 2 weeks. And the reason is so simple. This is, for most of these kids, this is one of the biggest stages they'll ever be on in their life. This is one of the most meaningful experiences they'll ever have. And for most of them, it's the most meaningful experience they've had up to this point. And to be a part of that is just so incredibly humbling. It's so special. And, I take it so seriously, and our entire broadcast team does, because we know how meaningful this is. We know how much it means to the parents and to the grandparents and to the aunts and uncles and all the family and friends back at home who can't make it down. It is such an honor to be a part of it. And it's the emotion that you experience, the heartbreak, the highs, the lows, everything in between. There's something every year that just makes you go, wow, how lucky am I to be a part of this? And so as long as I can, I'm going to keep part of this broadcast crew because it just means so much to me. And hopefully, our work through our broadcast shines through and shows how much it means to, because it's the same with everybody on our crew. We wouldn't be doing this and putting in the time and effort we do if it didn't mean anything.
Brad Hanson, WAOW, again, one of the voices of the state basketball tournaments, both the girls and the boys. Hey, Brad, again, appreciate the time. Great job, as always, the last 2 weeks, and try to rest up the rest of the week, okay?
I sure will. I got to go put my kids to bed, so that no rest coming anytime soon. All right, thanks, guys.
Absolutely, and that's Brad Hanson. We're going to take a quick time out and then come back and talk about hockey this year. And we'll be joined by Wausau West head hockey coach B.J. Brandt. Coming up next, it's the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230.
Excitement and buzzer beaters aplenty at the WIAA Boys Basketball State Tournament. I'm Travis Wilson, and this is a WisSports.net Minute brought to you by NFHSNetwork.com. More high school sports news after this.
Do you ever wish you could be in two places at once? With homework, carpool, practice, and everything else, sometimes you just can't make it to every game. But the NFHS Network's streaming platform makes that a little easier. For just $11.99 a month, you can watch unlimited high school sports live and on demand, at home or on the go. You can watch online or on one of our mobile or connected TV apps. Visit NFHSNetwork.com and subscribe today to never miss another game.
What an exciting weekend it was for the WIAA Boys Basketball State Championships at the Kohl Center, featuring numerous buzzer beaters and great games. It started on Thursday when Lakeside Lutheran's Casey Guzman banked home a runner with less than 2 seconds remaining to lift the Warriors to a 57-55 win over Kiel in a D3 state semifinal. However, Lakeside would fall in the Division III championship game on Saturday, 65-54 against St. Thomas More. The excitement continued into Thursday's evening session when Mineral Point rallied from a 7-point deficit with under 25 seconds left to play to defeat Aquinas when Logan Thousand hit a three-pointer at the buzzer for a 62-61 win. The Pointers won on another thriller in the D4 championship against Kenosha St. Joe's when Drew Ashelman scored on a putback at the buzzer for a 65-64 win. In Division II, Wisconsin Lutheran's Alex Green scored on a layup at the buzzer to lift the Vikings over Nicolay in a state semifinal. Wisco finished a perfect 30-0 with a dominating 83-62 win over Pewaukee, ending the Pirates' run of 3 consecutive state titles. In the longest and highest scoring game in state tournament history, Arrowhead outlasted Neenah 99-95 in 4 overtimes, though the Warhawks ran out of gas in the title game, falling to Marquette 84-62. Columbus Catholic captured the Division V crown. This has been a WisSports.net Minute. Check us out online at WisSports.net.
WXCO 1230 AM, W255DN Wausau, streaming at bullfallsradio.com.
And welcome back. Big High School Sports Show, Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230, bullfallsradio.com, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. With Jeff Gress, I'm Chad Holmes. Before we go any further, I said this is the 32nd week of the season for this program. I did some counting. We've had 36 student athletes on this year. We've had 30 coaches, and we've had 4 media people, media people would be the best way to go about it. So that is 70 different guests during the course of this year.
Well, what do we, every time I say the best part about it is when coaches come in and give their insight and paint a picture of their program and share the knowledge that they have, as well as the players' excitement. I mean, that's my favorite part. I mean, it's okay hanging out with you, Chad, I'm saying, but my favorite part is the coaches and players, just because you get what the importance of high school athletics is and why things are done the way it is and why it's a big deal in our world. We need that stuff.
And one of the 36 that we've had in terms of coaches is back with us. So it's not number 37. It's still number 36.
Oh, that's what I was going to ask you.
No, I do not. I don't count them twice.
I know.
And actually, a little trivia. I've had a couple. We've had one student athlete on twice this year. And I don't think anyone would get it. I think just one.
Can you give it away with the conference?
I can give you it away with the school. How about no? I don't think you'd know it. The kid is from Wausau East. Any idea? It's not during the winter, actually. Actually, he was on once during your time of the show and once on with Coach Jason Foster.
Now you're.
Do you have any idea?
I don't.
Pacey Weber.
Oh,
because he was a guest early in the season, and then I had one night we brought all four of the Brockmeyer Award nominees in.
Great trivia.
So he was the only student
mad I
athlete,
didn't get
and now
that.
we have our first coach back, BJ Brandt. And Coach, again, thanks for coming on because we're kind of putting the bow on the winter sports season, and we've been talking a lot about basketball and the state tournament, and we'll be talking a little bit about the season as a whole later on. But with hockey, and it's hard to believe how fast time goes. I mean, it's already been, 3 weeks now since the state tournament finished up, and it was a lot of fun doing the games down in Madison with yourself. As you look at high school hockey, because, again, when we were at the banquet, I think a week or two ago, again, it just rolls together, last week actually, I mentioned the fact that I saw a story in The Athletic about the Minnesota State Hockey Tournament. And I know nobody else is going to be like Minnesota. That's just, I think that's a 1 in 50 where they are able to get 20,000 folks in for every session of that tournament. But as we look back at the second year now at Bob Suter's Capitol Ice Arena, how positive of a change has it been in your opinion? Because you obviously had a lot to do with the discussions. Are we on the right track? Because I think a lot of it is you're not going to turn things over in 1 year or 2 years or even 5 years. You want to get things better each year. Have the last 2 years been better for high school hockey in Wisconsin?
Well, I think part of it is who you ask. I think year one, I think people were a little bit disappointed in some of the uncontrollables, the parking, some of the venue type stuff that was different. Because you could park wherever you wanted at Alliant Energy.
I love that.
You know, you didn't have to worry about parking.
Right.
You could walk right up. You could find a seat. You know, all those things were great, unless you were the student athlete and coaches who were in an empty building playing a state tournament. So I think from the student athlete side and hopefully the WIA side that we've created a better environment for the coaches and student athletes to play in. And I think the improvements they made, the facility in WI made from year one to year two to now having a media room and
right.
getting some of the – because one of the things we talked about as coaches is our hockey players never got that experience to sit in front of the media and get questions and just the full state tournament experience. Right. And they added that. They changed the game times to make sure that the shuffle in, shuffle out wasn't as chaotic as it was before. The 2 years – we've been blessed with really good weather down there because I worry about people standing outside in the rain or just some of the things that a fan might have to go through to watch their son or daughter or family member or community member play. I think overall it's been a good experience. I think full venues because we always talked as coaches, we could never replicate the sectional final scene for our kids.
Right.
And now we can. You look at all Division I games were sold out hours before the game was there. All the Division II games were super close to selling out. The girls' games, I think, had better attendance than a year ago. So I think you look at, I was listening to you guys on the way in and talking about attendance and how that changes things. I think for the most part, things are going in a really good direction at Cap Ice for us.
And I will say as well, I thought, again, because often you hear complaints about the WIAA and what they do. They gave myself and you a much better place to broadcast from. The internet was much better. I mean, I had no issues at all. They did everything they could possibly do to make, I think, myself and all the other radio and stream people that were on hand the best possible broadcast as well. So again, that's one of the things, and you've been talking about this the last couple of years as well, that when there are concerns, it feels as though those concerns are being listened to by the WIA.
I think LeVar Ridgway's our hockey liaison there, and he's done a really good job of listening to the coaches, getting feedback from a lot of people. And he did a great job of allowing us into the process to finding a new venue. And I think that right there automatically created buy-in within our coaches group, buy-in within the hockey community. And it's funny, I just finished up my end-of-year survey for the Coaches Association and got to send it out tomorrow. And we talked about, there's some questions in there about venue. And when you look at everybody's like, well, why can't we do Resch? Or why can't we do Laban? Or why can't we do Panther Arena? And then what they don't realize is those events and venues have to want us.
Right.
And I think right now we're building a brand to make somebody else larger than the current venue want us. And that's where I think we're creating a great environment for the student athletes. I hope it's really good for the WIA. It seems to be. The coaches and players have a lot of positive things to say about it. The one drawback is Middleton plays their home games there. Mm-hmm. There's a high school team that plays in that arena. So there's that part for where I think the Madison people get a little bit grumpy about it. But it's better than a place that had ice in for 6 days a year and a building that was just out of date.
And you had scoreboards that were malfunctioning. I mean, it was a decade of really of depression, to be honest with you, because I think there's one thing that, and Jeff was saying this to Brad in the last segment, that we want people to love this as much as we love this. Mm-hmm. I think that is there's that frustration because you want to always put that best foot forward. And the thing about it is you can't take a shortcut. That I think there was a lot of bad feeling because of just those silly issues and having the ice surface not be the way it was. You can't fix it all in a day, but I do agree with you that we are taking steps forward and showing. I think anybody that watched the championship Saturday, saw those games, saw the energy in that rink, would be impressed more than what we saw. I mean, even the video output of those state games from Alliant, even then it felt like you were far away from it. Now you feel like you're there. You can feel that game a lot better, and it's a better presentation of what we see on a nightly basis at any rink around Wisconsin.
Well, I always think about when they were at Alliant, they really had to try hard to find a packed-in student section to get it on TV, to make it seem like it was a great environment. They don't have to do that because they're right on the glass at Cap Ice. And I think, I heard some of the fans like, oh, I don't really like watching a game there. I don't like, there's some of that side of it, but I'm sorry, fans, like we love you and we want you to be there. But from my perspective, this is a great environment for the student athletes. They got people outside of them, like sitting behind them on the benches, the coaches do, and they've got people on the other side. And there's some big game feel to it, and it certainly presented a lot better on TV.
Do you feel, hitting on that state tournament, do you feel like, because it's so much so about getting the teams that are supposed to be down there to showcase those right athletes and those right teams. And I know that the hockey seeding meetings and the playoff stuff's a little different, because sometimes we talk, a team got knocked around a little bit by the computer and then they didn't make it down there. Or some special athletes that have really carried their teams didn't get down there because of the way the playoff bracketing is set up. Is that in a good spot right now, do you think, to where it's getting the right teams out there to create that atmosphere? Or is there things that you look at that could be a positive change for that? By judging their facial expressions, I'm seeing in the room right now. I meant for nothing to be loaded. It's just something off the top of my head that I'm ignorant about that I don't know.
No, I love this question because if you look at our section, the section that Wausau West is in,
13 teams.
There's 13 teams, and if you're and now you guys are talking about the performance factor.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now we add New Richmond, so the reigning runner-up and champion a year ago now gets added to our section with Eau Claire Memorial, Wausau West, Stevens Point, Rapids, Hudson, Superior. Now you look at that section. Yeah, do I think they could spread the talent around? I do, but I also know that it's not going to happen. So I look at it from the competitive side. Great. The team that comes out of this should be the favorite to win the state tournament. I think you look at it, we've Hudson was a 3 seed a year ago from our section, and Chippewa was the 1 seed. And I think, everybody was a little surprised that they didn't make it to the finals because Brookfield played well in the third period and essentially stole the game, but played really well to get to the finals. The seeding, I love that the coaches do it.
Mm-hmm.
I think we get it right, and I would not. I've watched basketball the last couple of years, and talking to the coaches that I know, and I don't think anyone's been happy with it so far, unless you're a clear number 1 or you're a clear 16. I think everybody in between has an argument as to why they shouldn't be where they are, and I think our hockey coaches get it right 99% of the time. I think having meetings and talking it out and being able to talk about your season, like if you're missing a key player, that could be a reason for a 4-game skid in the middle of a basketball season. But all of a sudden you get that player back and you're a completely different team at the end of the year. So the coaches take that into effect there. It's a question on the survey. Do we want to go to electronic seating or do we want to stay with in person? And I think the in-person seating works for us. I think, are we getting the right teams? I think the next growth for us is to get more Division I teams down there, no matter what way we can. Because right now it's 4-4. We got 4 Division II teams out of a 32-team pool. And then whatever's left, which has been in the 54 to 56 range, get the other 4 slots. So I think we're looking at trying to way to get 8 and 4. But that... we know that that's an uphill battle because that would affect the girls' tournament. And it's really important for us to have that equity for those girls, to have that environment, to have the same access that we get as boys.
When you look at the game itself, when you look at the skill level of the teams that you see, whether it's in the Wisconsin Valley Conference or in the non-conference games that you play, and you always play some of the best teams in the state of Wisconsin, how is the game? How is the game that people come out and see right now in terms of the talent, in terms of the coaches, in terms of everything, in terms of the entertainment that people, when they put their $5 or whatever it may be down, I should really know how much it is, but I always go in the back door because of I'm lugging something. So I pay with that with my back. But in terms of the game itself, how do you feel about the talent that you see on the boys' side right now?
On the boys' side, I think it's really good. I think there's a lot of equity. I mean, I think seeing Brookfield down there and seeing some different teams in sectional finals here, there's different pockets of talent as you watch, the youth scores coming up throughout the youth state tournaments. New Richmond's loaded. Like, they've got a good youth group. Hudson's got a really good youth group. Who else? There's a bunch of other youth programs that had found success in the state tournament. Medford participated in a youth state tournament for the first time in a really long time and ended up finishing 4th in the state tournament. So, you like little pockets of small Division I and 2 communities that are going to have success. I think our Team Wisconsin model, where the kids play for that Tier 1 group and the Wheels and the Wheel group, which is a Tier 2 group. So, like, you're getting more kids playing more often, which creates its own challenge, right? I mean, these kids have to balance multi-sports all the time. But I think for the game itself, there's a lot of depth, and I think you're going to see it'll be interesting to see where things go, because knowing just in our section alone, I know Ashland is going down to Division II, New Richmond's coming up to Division I. Does that change our circle at all? Fond du Lac Springs has now got to go up to Division I because of the performance factor.
Mm-hmm.
That changes the Milwaukee, Fond du Lac, Appleton area section. How does that change those things? So where the game is, I think it's going to be really interesting. There's some good depth. There's some really good talent coming. As long as they stay within the high school game, I think fans would really enjoy it. I mean, I'd argue any fan that is considering going to a high school athletic event, go. Just go.
And
right?
something real interesting when you talk about the balance. When you look at the teams that made it to the state tournament this year, the champion Notre Dame Academy in Division I, they lost 8 games this year. You had the runner-up Brookfield, they lost 6 games this year. You had even Chippewa Falls, the number 1 seed, and obviously they were the number 1 seed in the toughest bracket, and they still lost 4 games. You had Edgewood, who was obviously had a great year. They lost 4 games. In Division II, you had teams that lost 9 games, and 14 games. It just shows, again, even the best teams, they're not just losing games, they're losing often. That shows, again, a great balance right now in high school boys hockey, doesn't it?
A ton of balance. I think it makes seating meetings really interesting because when they happen, there's usually about 4 games left, and sometimes there's some really key matchups. Like I think Chippewa and Eau Claire Memorial played after the seeding meeting, and I think Eau Claire Memorial really wanted that game before. But there's a ton of balance. Even you look in our section, I mean, there is some really tight games, and even the games like we played everyone really tough.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we found a way to give away more than we wanted to.
And the thing about real quickly, you played real tough against the teams above you, but also those teams below you played Wisconsin Rapids twice, DC Everest. So there's almost double-digit teams that were very tough teams to play in that very tough bracket.
Yeah, I think our section's fun. I mean, and the nice thing about our coaches is we're all scheduling each other, so it makes seating meetings actually pretty easy. You know, like boom, boom, boom. You figure it out. But it's been, this year's schedule was awesome. I really enjoyed the games. I enjoyed the travel. Next year a little bit less travel. But I think the boys' game is in a good place. I don't know that we're producing like the super high end talent that we've done in years past.
Right.
But boy, our pool's a little bit deeper, and we're producing some really high quality student athletes.
So I guess along those lines too, you've talked about the state tournament, you've talked about seeding. I liken this to basketball without knowing enough hockey rules. So, the shot clock's on the table, halves versus quarters, some other different choices they want to make in the games that could either spice it up or change it positively or negatively. Anything that's on the table for hockey, or anything that you think would be beneficial to, or a rule change at all?
Well, I think you'll see with the unfortunate accident over in England, I think you'll see some neck laceration protection coming. I think USA Hockey mandated that starting in August 1, that all players 18 years and under and officials have to have neck protection because of the injury that resulted in an unfortunate death over in England in a professional game. And I think you'll see some of that. On the procedural side, the overtimes in the playoffs, I think, still bother a lot of coaches, because right now we all want to see the game end 5-on-5. And in the regular season, we went to a 8-minute 5-on-5 overtime, which is the normal game. And then we went to a 5-minute 3-on-3 just to get a result. So there's some of that. And then in the playoffs, when you get to the playoffs in the state tournament, we go an 8-minute 5-on-5, resurface, 8-minute 5-on-5. Then we drop down to 4-on-4. Then we drop down to 3-on-3 to get a result. And I think as coaches, we want to see it end 5-on-5. We don't want to get down to, 4-on-4 or 3-on-3 to see a result in a state tournament. Will it be exciting? Yeah, absolutely. But when we went to that model for the playoffs, that's why we added the second overtime, because our argument was, okay, well, if you're going to force us to go 4-on-4 and 3-on-3 to determine our fate and the length of our season, we need to practice this throughout the season. Right. So getting to that 3-on-3 time. So I think what you'll see from our group is we're going to request a little bit more 5-on-5 time. So maybe it's a 8-minute 5-on-5 and then followed by a 17 5-on-5. I think that's the next step for us to make sure that we give ample opportunity for the game to end in a more traditional hockey sense.
Again, we're talking to B.J. Brandt, head hockey coach at Wausau West High School, here on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. The girls' side, and you obviously, you were with me in the booth for the last 4 games of the regular of the playoff run for the Central Wisconsin Storm. You have a daughter who was a state champion, which is obviously very exciting. So I think you know enough about the girls' game to talk about that as well. How would you characterize the state of the girls' game? Because I know that it's been a situation where they've been hoping to get more teams, and it has not happened. I mean, you look at the Storm, they were in a very tough section, but it was only 6 teams in the section. Happened to be 3 of the top 4 teams in the state in the section. But at the same time, we're kind of, steady and even sometimes losing a team or two on the girls' side. But yet, it was, I thought, a very exciting state tournament. I thought it was a very exciting sectional. We saw some incredibly exciting sectional games, including an overtime sectional final. So I would say that there's a lot of good things about the girls' game. We just wish there were a few more teams.
You didn't mention where that sectional final was, Chad.
Oh, stop it. I'm trying to forget that part of it.
I think the girls' game is in a good place. I think their high-end talent is good. I think you look at the Autumn Coopers of the world from Superior, Division I athlete, committed to Bemidji State to play Division I hockey. I think, we've got a couple other girls that are on that path to be Division I players within that group. I think overall, and this is boys and girls, we're producing a ton of Division III hockey players, which is awesome. I think anybody who
what a great story, by the way, with a national champion, undefeated national champion from this state,
with a lot of with Wisconsin players,
right? I mean, fantastic.
Yeah, and I just you look at where the girls' game is and how we're producing. And again, like I suggest anyone who knocks any Division III athletic event, go watch it live in person, because it is outstanding sporting. I mean, it is the true passion for the game. But the girls' game is producing some really good players, and I think you look at the way we kind of judge a little bit off how our Tier 1 teams do, the pre and post. The girls' side right now has Wisconsin Selects 19U going to nationals, Team Wisconsin 19U going to nationals. They've got a 16U wheel team going to nationals. They've got a 14U team that's participating, or another 16U team participating in nationals at the USA hockey level. So you look at that, there's a lot of girls that are playing some really high-end hockey. Now, the one thing I'd say the girls' game doesn't have is growth in teams and in communities, because you look at it right now, I think it's at 26 teams total. Obviously we want to see that number grow. I don't know if that happens. I mean, the argument is that Central Wisconsin Storm should split up. Well, I just don't know. Like, you might split up for a year, and a year later you're back together, because it's just the way the numbers fall.
And that was going to be my question was, you're talking about all the girls that are already into it and already interested, and that's why those teams that you listed are able to balloon and go out and find success. One of the things that Chad always shares on my limited hockey knowledge is that there's not, how the Storm has to travel so much and go out and get all these, because there's just not as many teams. Is there a factor for that because it seems like it's doing well, but is there something that can be done to you can't make a school have a team if they don't have enough interest? Is there stuff not being done there, or is it just is there any way to change that to get more teams in Wisconsin?
I mean, I think the way you change it is at the youth level, right? I mean, you make sure that you get young girls and young athletes into the game, and you hope that it pays off later. Some communities, like I look at Green Bay. Green Bay's got a really good strong youth program. Well, they all come together and have a really strong high school team. And you look at the way youth is structured a little bit now, like we have a Central Wisconsin Storm, a youth program. So you look at those girls have played together quite a bit. Sure, some play boys, some play for different teams and things like that. But for the most part, all these girls are playing for the Central Wisconsin Storm youth. So the youth programs have somewhat branded around what that high school environment is. So I don't know if that itself leads to growth. In our Wausau community, we had a Wausau Warjack, so just our youth program had a 10U girls program of all Wausau girls. So that part, I think you have to get to more single community-based programs to be able to allow the high school game to grow a little bit. But right now, if you look at the youth programs, they're branded almost identically to what their high school motto is, or what their high school mascot is.
And one thing that's fortunate around here is we do have the ice sheets, where you do have, Wausau has Marathon Park, you have Everest with Green Neck, you have Merrill with the Smith Center. A lot of the areas in the state, especially maybe some of the larger population centers, unfortunately, they don't have these ice sheets, so they have to have these almost regionalized groups as well. I mean, there's a lot of different factors that I think a lot of people don't realize that, say, one of the groups down in southeast Wisconsin wants to break away. Well, you also have to have the ice sheet, and in some areas it's hard to, even if you had an interest, to find the land and build it, and the cost involved. There's a lot involved, isn't there?
Well, every time you see a school addition, Chad, there's never an ice rink in the plans. But you know what? Every school's got a basketball facility. Yeah. So you look at it. Neenah just built a phenomenal high school. Well, they didn't build an ice rink, but they built a whole bunch of basketball courts and a field house. So the schools aren't going to get into that. There's no reason they should. But yeah, I think you're going to see there's a new rink coming into Forest, so hopefully that leads to some growth on the north side of Madison there. I think there's talks of new rinks around here. Does that lead to growth? Does that lead to more growth within the game and in the girls' game specifically? I think there's a lot of girls playing, but I don't think that there's a ton of school support for it. You look at some of these co-ops, like man, there's 14 schools and a co-op. So some of these girls are traveling significant time to get to practice. And just the Storm, pretty fortunate. It's usually a Marathon Park, Mosinee, or Green Neck. So all of them in a relatively, confined space. But I think for the girls' game, there has to be some more community-based stuff at the youth level, and that will lead to more teams.
And real quickly about the game on the ice, I agree 100% that the game has changed since I first remember when the Storm made their first run back in 2008, winning a state championship, and then seeing the game as it's developed. You see these girls shooting the puck so much better. I mean, I remember back in the early days of girls hockey, that was one of the areas where you didn't see a lot of kids that could really shoot. And I think right before I was leaving on the Thursday after the Storm had won their game and St. Croix Valley was playing, and seeing Kendall Sunby shoot the puck. And you see, again, some of these girls that have that ability to shoot the puck, there's so many more of those these days, aren't there?
Well, there is. I think, there's another Division I commit. Kendall Sunby's committed to Maine, to play college hockey. So you look at a kid that gets to showcase her talent on the big stage, which is awesome for her and her team and her community. I think so. I think the skill of the game has changed. I think, like I talked to you when we were on the air, like the Storm versus Green Bay was a great showcase of high school hockey talent, girls hockey talent in our state. It was a great two teams to have to be showcased on the statewide network and through this radio station and to be able to show what girls can do and how the game has grown. Think back to, the very first year, I think Hudson was the champion that year, and you look at how the game has changed from there. Man, the girls shoot the puck better. They handle the puck better. They're faster. They play the game with pace. They play the game with, we talked. There's no body checking in girls hockey, but it's a really physical game.
And I guess to wrap it up, let's talk about your team in the Wisconsin Valley Conference looking into the future. We had Thomas Passano from DC Everest last week, and I asked him, I said, we've had Stevens Point and Wausau West kind of be that tier at the top for such a long time. And I asked him, because he have a younger team, a lot of himself being back and a number of his younger sophomore teammates he was talking about. But as you look ahead, both for your program, for Stevens Point, for DC Everest, Wisconsin Rapids had a really good season as well. And then, of course, you still have the Blue Jacks and the Marshfield Tigers. How do you look at the Wisconsin Valley Conference going into next year?
I mean, I think there's going to be some parity. I think there's going to be a lot of competitiveness. I think, if you look at SPASH, they've got a lot coming back. You look at Wausau West, we have a good amount of talent coming back. You look at DC Everest, I mean, they graduated 2 or 3 kids only. So they've got to feel pretty excited about it. Rapids loses a lot of scoring. I think with Dekarsky and Gauze, those two guys have.
It's about time, huh?
I'm okay with them graduating.
They've been around a while.
Yeah, Rapids will be down a little bit in numbers, so I don't think they'll have a JV, but they'll still be really skilled and really talented. Marshfield and East Merrill, both programs are improving. I think you look at the way the scoring of the conference was, it was a little bit better than it was a year ago. I like where our conference is at. I think we have a good conference. I think, when we couple that with the teams we play in outside of our conference, I mean, the reality is for Wausau West, we got to be better in conference and we got to be better out of conference because I think we 8-2 in conference and we won 13 games. So that tells you what our outer conference record was. It wasn't very good. But it's those type of things that allow student athletes to grow. You look at the way Everest went throughout their year. I mean, they were a loss early in the year that they wanted to have back, and then I think they rattled off 10 or 12 wins in a row. I mean, they grew up throughout that year, and I think a lot of coaches really enjoy when you can give kids an opportunity and they get to shine a little bit. And I think our conference certainly improved as the year went on, and hopefully that means great competition for it next year.
Anything else you want to add, Jeff?
Well, I always like to ask, since this is the first time I got to talk to you on air this year, was you've done this for a long time. You've had, success and fun. And I don't know, what makes coaching high school.
It's hard to believe it's been a decade, huh?
Yeah. But you know what I mean? What makes it, because some people like, I'm out, I'm done. Other people like, I'm going to keep coming back. What makes it a great experience for you?
Well, I'll be honest with you. There's a lot of both of those throughout a season. You look at, you have good groups. I really love the process. A lot of times people say, well, you won 13, you lost 13. During the season, at times, I don't know what our record is because you're so focused on, okay, what did we do well last night? What do we got to do better tomorrow night. And the process of kids allowing, like, learning life through sport is such an opportunity for these kids to lose control and learn from it, keep control and learn from it, be great teammates, learn from it, have adversity and learn from it, and all this little controlled environment that they can apply later in life. I think that's what keeps me coming back every year. Somebody will ask, well, what did you say in between periods? I talked about how hard that was, and how there's going to be times in your life that something was going to be really difficult, and you're going to have to learn how to process it and be better on the backside of it. Oh, you didn't talk about forecheck. You didn't talk about... No, we talked about how can we apply this to our lives, and how as a coach, maybe sometimes you become too emotional, make a mistake. And then a kid does the same thing. Well, we both got to learn from it. As a young student athlete, they're growing up right in front of our eyes. And sometimes they're not at their best. And that's a great opportunity to learn. And sometimes they're at their best, and it's really fun to watch others rally around them and just find success because they're good people, they're good humans, and everybody's rooting for them. So to answer your question, I love the process. I really do. I love, November 7th when we get to start next year. I'm ready for it to go and see where we're going to be. 24 preseason games, and then you get the playoffs.
BJ Brandt, head hockey coach of Wausau West, part-time color commentator with me. Again, it's hard to believe it has been 10 years. I tell you, it just flies by so very quickly. But thanks again. It's always been fun being around you and your boys, and we'll look forward to being at the Hobbs Ice Arena Thanksgiving weekend.
Sounds great. Thanks, Chad.
We're going to come back in 2 minutes and have one more segment. We're going to kind of put it all together here in terms of we'll talk about the basketball aspect, because Jeff is, I think, look at the way his arms are crossed. The man looks very tense.
I'm listening. Trying to learn. I'm fine.
But we'll come back, our final segment of the season, here on the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio 98.9 and 1230.
So, how are the kids?
Well, Emily made the honor roll.
Oh, good for her.
Yeah, we're really proud of her. Tyler, on the other hand, though.
What's going on?
He's been moody lately, just feeling down and not like himself.
Oh, we've been there. Nick was struggling last spring. He was so anxious and stressed.
Really? What helped?
Well, he joined the soccer team. And ever since, he's been a lot happier. He has more energy, he's less stressed, and he's definitely in a better mood at home. It's made a huge difference.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm glad he's getting out of the house, he's getting some exercise, and he's off his phone for once. It's been good for his mental health.
Sounds like it's been good for your mental health, too.
Participating in Wisconsin high school sports improves students' physical and mental health. Encourage your son or daughter to get involved. This message presented by the WIAA and the Wisconsin Athletic Directors Association.
Winter sports are here. Align your young athletes and yourself with health by scheduling an appointment with Dr. Sarah at Shine Chiropractic in Rim Mountain. Stay in the game with our comprehensive 3-point neurological exam, safe for the entire family. Don't let the daily grind keep you and your student athletes on the sidelines this year. Call Dr. Sarah at 715-298-5104. That's 715-298-5104 in Rim Mountain today.
Now you can organize and create lasting memories by converting your photos and memories into digital photos you can share with family and friends. Picks and Pieces will create your custom photo books and slideshows that are perfect for family gatherings, weddings, or any special events. You'll receive your finished product on an external hard drive or cloud service of your choice for easy viewing and sharing. Contact Melissa at Picks and Pieces Photo Management and Digital Organization at 446-0762. Email mel@picksandpieces.com. And welcome back. Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. BullFallsRadio.com, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO and on the Civic Media app. Jeff Gress and myself, it's time to kind of put it all together this year. And again, it's easy to say, well, best player, but I kind of want to go a little bit differently in terms of some of our teams that we've been covering. And I guess, let's start with boys basketball. When you look at it, whether it's teams or individuals, maybe individuals who really stepped up this year, that was almost a surprise, or teams that you were impressed with the process that they went through and the progress that they made, what maybe jumped out in a way that, a little bit off the beaten path than simply, hey, this was the best player or this was the best team?
Well, jumping into the GNC right away, one of the first teams I wrote down, I tried to write stuff down off your questions and then look at my notes later to see what I could remember, because I figured if it stood out in my memory after all we've talked about all season, it had to be something. I actually liked what Rhinelander was able to do. I know their playoff run wasn't anything spectacular. I mean, they might have only won one or two, if that, if one for sure, maybe two. But I thought to come back and tie for the conference lead in some of those games they had to win.
They could put that up on the banner.
Yeah.
They got a conference championship.
Especially
against a great Mosinee team.
Right. Oh, yeah. Mosinee is very good and deserving of that conference championship, too. And I think for them to come back and fight for a battle in it is a big deal, because, sometimes your back's against the wall. You've been, winning and losing is every other game, and that's why they're sitting at about 500. But to come back and pull that out, you got to give Coach Lemons and his group credit to get that first place tie for the conference championship.
That's a great props. That really is, and frankly, I wasn't even thinking that way, and that's a really good, I think, point, because there were times this year, and I think I said it to you, and I may have said it to Coach Nate Lemons, the brother of Derek Lemons, of course, the Lemons brothers here in north central Wisconsin, where Rhinelander lost a lot of games in terms of non-conference. They challenged themselves. They play a lot of Division I teams from the Wisconsin Valley Conference, and they were losing a lot of games. I said to you, man, sometimes does that bear down on a team? But yet, the last big game of the regular season, they had to go to Mosinee, go into that gym, knowing they had to win that basketball game to have a chance to get a share of the conference championship, and they did it. Again, what we heard from Coach Brandt, the experiences of having some tough times, they were able to use, I believe, based on what they were able to accomplish in that win at Mosinee, to find a way that if they hadn't been challenged, if they hadn't had the bumps and the bruises, they probably don't win that basketball game.
Correct. Right. Fighting, as Coach Brandt mentioned, fighting that adversity. What are you going to do when your back's against the wall? You're going to try to come out on the winning side, or are you going to take your lumps? And I think that was a big deal. Just sticking on the boys' sides in terms of coaching jobs. The other way your mind wanders in my mind is, you look at some of the conference championships. I thought I've coached the Marywood long enough to know what a war it is on any given night, just personally, and for Coach Jacobson to go through the conference. This is one of the few years I think we've seen where the unblemished record in the Marywood. Yep. I mean, you got it's 16-0. You got to give them credit there. Usually, there's one slip up sometimes where you try not to take a night off, but the kids just didn't do the job they needed to. So you usually get one there, and the other teams are so good they can steal one from you, even if you are hands down the best team. So I thought the job that they did throughout the season was outstanding, and piggybacking on that, the Valley was highly competitive, and I thought one of the best, with doing the show with you, one of the best years I've seen the Valley at just a high stakes, and for Marshfield to be able to go again on unblemished record in that conference. They just always found a way. It might have just only been by a couple points, might have been by 20. They played significantly well and consistent, and so for Coach Fisher and Marshfield on the boys' side, I thought those are between them, Rhinelander, Marathon. There's a ton of other. I know we're always going to miss somebody here for our listeners.
Well, the thing about Marshfield was a team I was going to mention because, number one, sweeping Stevens Point, sweeping Wausau East, really good basketball teams. And then when they got the number one seed, and I said before the start of the playoffs, that was going to be a challenge. I mean, they were the number one, but again, it was almost as though we were waiting for the teams from the WVC to fall short of the sectionals. And both Marshfield and Stevens Point were able to get to the sectionals. And I thought for Marshfield to be able to beat Kaukauna. I saw Kaukauna. That was a really good basketball team. It's a shame that they were not able to get over the hump against Neenah. I think that was a team that deserved an opportunity to get to state, and I think they would have been a challenge at the state tournament as well. But, like you said, I think it was just a fantastic year generally for the Wisconsin Valley Conference to see Marshfield do what they did, to see Stevens Point again be a great challenge, and they're going to be a big challenge again next year, to see Wausau East finally be able to take that step. We've seen, I think, the growth for some of these younger players the last few years. You saw the talent. Yep. When was it going to come together? It came together this year. To be able to beat Stevens Point in that massive win on their home court, to be able to find a way in that thriller against DC Everest where they were able to find a way, to be able to get to the sectionals for the first time in such a long time. Great for Wausau East. That school needed, I think, that kind of athletic success. It's been a rough go of it for a number of years. And even I thought, again, I will use my little bit of a bias here, but I thought Wausau West had their best year in a number of years. When you look at the bus test, I think whenever you have a high school team that gets off the bus, some of the teams you're going to say, wow, that team is wow, whether height or girth or whatever it may be. Wausau West had a bunch of 6'1", 6'2" kids. They didn't have size, and yet they were able to battle every night to win 15 games, and they frankly could have won a few more. They had a tough overtime loss against Everest late, and at Marshfield, almost handed Marshfield their only conference loss. So again, I thought they were very impressive. I thought Wisconsin Rapids, a lot of question marks. Boy, it's not easy to replace a guy like Dan Witter. I mean, that guy is such a good coach, a guy that was there for such a long time. But that Wisconsin Rapids team did things a little differently. They were an exciting team. They had their moments this year. And when you look at Merrill didn't win a game this year in the conference. But they gave Wausau East a great battle in the playoffs. That shows how good that conference was. Right. Because Merrill is not one of those teams you think, oh, they had nothing. They have some good basketball players on that team. They got a very good coach, and yet they weren't able to win a conference game. And they did, and as Coach Pieper said last week, against teams from the GNC, they beat Rhinelander, the conference champions. I mean, they did a lot of good things. So that conference, the Valley, was one of the really good stories this year.
In the balance, I think, of players that you actually have leaving that are considered good players did well for their time there and they're graduating, with the youth that's expected to return.
Yeah,
I think so. Not only did you have those seniors that are out and are done due to graduation, they've left their mark on the conference. As much as everybody's talking about the load that's coming back in terms of these young players that have a ton of varsity experience. Slide to the girls' side with coaching, I thought. We talked about it early on, and we didn't know what to expect with McCarville and what she was doing at Spash. Like, what are they? They're playing good competition, but they're in it, but then they get beat up. You couldn't quite tell with the pattern of what the scores were showing. And so for them to, I'm looking at the conference here, for them to go back and solidify and win that conference in that first year, I think was a good job. I mean, to go get that's not an easy mark, and they found consistency as the season went on. The other, I'm just going to say Coach Nick because I'm going to botch his last name, at Wittenberg with the job they did with the I know Bondwell got him twice, but that was it. That was it. I mean, they did great in their conference. They did great in the playoff run. The injury that they sustained and to get those playoff games when he was in here on the interview, you could tell. I mean, he said it. We're the next person up, and I know in your mind that's what's coming as coach. But if you don't have your full lineup and you're not at full strength, you're deep. You're not going to show anybody, but you are nervous. You have some unexpected things that you want to see as the kids take the court for that game that won't have any proof until you actually take the court. And I thought the couple wins they had, being down some girls, and the youth they had, really is going to bring back some nice things for next season on the girls' side of those teams.
And I do think that the Valley has the opportunity on the girls' side to take that step like we saw on the boys' side. You mentioned Stevens Point. The player of the year this year was Jada Seibert, again, a freshman who I was exceptionally impressed with when I saw her play in person. She is going to be somebody that is going to be, when we talked about with Brad Hanson earlier about those players that are going to be ones that you want to see. She's going to be one that you're going to want to see. Again, just fantastic. And I think that Marshfield is a team that's going to be, again, knocking on the door. I think that's a program that's been so good for so long. They got a second-team performer back in Zyda Kolbeck, who's a very good basketball player, but also exciting in the Valley. You got 2 of the first-team all-conference performers back, including the player of the year, and then you have 4 of the 5 second-team performers is back as well. So I do think that there's a potential. I do think that when you look at some the key will be, can a team like DC Everett used to be really a good girls basketball program that struggled the last couple of years? Are they going to be able to get back to the competitive level that we saw for so many years? That's going to be one of the keys. Wausau West is going to be losing Kelly Cray. That's obviously a big loss for them, but they do have some younger players, and I do think that more of a foundation for this program has been set with more girls within the program. They had some really good teams, obviously, in the last decade plus. They got to take that next step. If you get Everest and West back to kind of where you expected them to be in the past, maybe not right at the top, but challenging Spash and Marshfield. It can't be Spash and Marshfield and then everybody else. Yeah. That's one of the keys for the Valley, I think, on the girls' side.
Well, and I think that's the beauty of the stage we're at right now. If you had a great season that you enjoyed overall as a coach, we're happy about it, was successful. You're sad to see it go, but you have no choice but to move on with time. And if it wasn't quite what you wanted to be, everybody, it's kind of right now at that even playing field. What can you challenge your players to do or accomplish or to be at for the next season? What can you get them to work on? And then for the players, this is the time when you're made. I mean, there's only so much coaches can do in the 4 months that they have them when you got 8 months of an off season to work at any skill you want and get better and drag a teammate along with you. So I think a lot of exciting things across conferences and across programs, just because the minute that season's done, there's pretty even playing field to get better.
And finally, on the girls' side as well, I think that how teams like Lakeland and Assumption come back. Those are teams that made state a year ago. They were very talented this year, came up short of state, but still have a lot of talent coming back. Obviously, Christina Wilmette will be one of the players to keep a very close eye on next year. But they also have, again, Sailor Timmerman, who's 6'1", Ava Evenhouse, who's 6'1". I'm guessing that Notre Dame Academy is going to finally get moved out of their bracket with the new success factor. So I think they're going to be very exciting to watch. And Assumption, of course, had a 2-point loss that knocked them out. That's going to be, I think, a team that's to keep a close eye on. And within the Merriwood South, I think there's been a little bit of a power shift between North and South in the Merriwood, and a lot of it is because I think a few of the Merriwood South teams have taken a step back. Are they going to be capable of coming back? Obviously, this year it was a very young team for Marathon. I think Coach Schneider is going to have that program back on the right track. Can Newman rebuild to where they were in the past? I think those are some of the questions as well.
Well, and what I like that you mentioned about these teams is they're going to be hungry because they get a lot of those same girls back, and they've had taste of things of what it's like to be down there, and I'm sure they have an expectation of where they want to get. So your Lakeland's Assumptions are going to be wanting back on that fast track, and you got Wilmette for Lakeland, like you mentioned, and Shaw comes back for Assumption, both Channel 7 All-Stars and accolades with that. So I think that transition of that youth, and that's across the board. I mean, we have teams like, just not to jump away from the girls, but DC Everest on the boys was young. Marshfield returns a bulk because it has the conference championships, and for the girls, I think this transition of youth to experience and what you're able to do with it, and maybe what you're not happy with from the previous season, and those improvements that you can drive into your strengths in the off season, I think are going to be a big deal. You still got the same great coaching and tradition and programs. It's going to be almost what are the players going to do with that to bring that showcase up to what it needs to be competitive in that conference?
We got a little more than a minute to go. Any final thoughts? I know there's a lot on those sheets, but
nothing that we within a minute.
A little more than a minute.
Okay,
you got some. We'll get you there.
Well, let's just finish off with everything culminating to the state tournament games. Did the seedings do justice? Did those, when they numbered those teams from 1 to 4, what we've talked about?
Last weekend 3 of the 4 were number 3 of the 5, I should say, were number ones.
Yeah, and I'm talking, I guess, the boys because it's most
so
recent.
three number ones. Sounds like it was pretty accurate, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But that was Did the coaches vote on those though?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
But I'm still just asking because we talked about, you have a seed going into there, and then you reseed again. Do you get that bias based on how
I do think it's still better. I think it's good because I do think we've seen better matchups. And even the 1 versus 4. I mean, there have been blowouts, but I do think in the end it's led to some pretty good Saturdays for the state championship games, both on the girls and the boys side.
And you've done enough games at different levels, and I'm talking like playoff levels, all the way going down to state this year. If I don't follow high school basketball, and I'm just a person on the outside, from what you've seen, why is it valuable to come watch or listen to that?
Oh, man.
Well,
I hate to use the term pure, but it's pure. I mean, it really is. I mean, everybody gives everything. Again, it's also such a great value. I mean, come on. I mean, if you go to a movie, you're paying 3-4 times as much as going to see a basketball game, and there's more drama at the basketball game than there would be at a movie. And again, it's part of being part of a community. I do think that's important. I think in this era where we're so caught up in our computers and our phones, to be out there, to be with your neighbors, to see the kids that are down the street, part of your community, I think is vital.
And what I love about it is I think there's consistencies that are in every team that's successful and down there. There's good coaching, player relationships, which I think is a big life skill to get along with the people you're around a lot. There's team play and knowing your roles, again, vital to success in a group. And I think there's an element of discipline. And when you see those things in those teams, I think it just brings out a beautiful product out on the court.
Thank you for everything this year.
Same here. Appreciate the ride, Chad. It's great.
Season 7 in the books. We'll be back starting in mid-August. Big high school sports show on Bull Falls Radio.
WXCO 1230 AM, W255DN Wausau, streaming at bullfallsradio.com.